All right, our second lesson on media and advertising today is kind of how advertising has evolved to become one of the main things that exists on social media. When you look at your social media feed, you'll obviously notice ads that are constantly plugged in. That's part of their business model that we talked about last class period, and that we've talked about many times before. The other thing that you see in there are brands themselves with their own account on social media and using social media as a way to promote themselves. In a way, advertising has kind of become its own type of media, and it doesn't need to exist inside other media like it did for a long time. It can kind of be its own thing on these platforms, which is why advertisers love social media so much. It's a different way for them to interact. What we're going to do today is talk a little bit about different ways that brands are interacting. If you look at the lecture that I posted along with this, I really kind of dive into some specific campaigns and some of the things they're doing on each of those campaigns. One of the things that we see advertisers doing nowadays is really thinking about the person they're trying to appeal to. And because they're doing that, we're seeing brands behave almost more, I don't know if bravely is the right word, but they are more willing to take a stance politically. This is something that, for the most part, brands in tradition have always just refused to do because it meant that they were alienating possible buyers. But since social media and Google and various internet ad platforms allow them to target specific groups of people, they can make their ads a little more centered on who they really want to buy their product and who they think will buy their product. Meaning they're more willing to say things that kind of have political messages. We saw Gillette do this really big ad campaign that kind of was centered around when the Me Too movement was happening. And that's something a lot of advertisers maybe in the past would have stayed away from. Gillette leaned into it, and it kind of made their brand seem a little bit different, and it allowed their brand to be something more than just a brand. And it ended up being a really good engagement vehicle for Gillette. We've seen brands engage with pop culture. So, Stranger Things is obviously a show that exists on Netflix, so it doesn't follow that advertising model that traditional television programs have followed. But we are seeing brands still being able to engage and use those audiences in a different way. If you've watched Netflix, kind of one of the things, or Stranger Things on Netflix, one of the things that happens is it's kind of set in this kind of retro world a little bit back in the 80s, and we see Eggo waffles make this appearance there. And what's funny is that's a brand that was pretty much not really doing well. Used to be really popular, not doing as well these days. But through social media, Stranger Things and Eggo Waffles kind of combined and cross promoted each other on social media. And that's something that we never would have seen happen in the past, where kind of both entities were working together, kind of in a fun way, market both of their products. So that's another way we've seen advertising change on social media. Another way that we've seen it happen is through what's known as kind of fan generated content. Applebee's had this competition where they were having people take pictures of their food and kind of promote it. So at the same time, people were willing to do that because people love to take food pictures on Instagram. Applebee's was able to use these pictures to promote how good their food looks, and it became kind of this interesting little cross promotion. This ability to use fans to help generate your own advertising is something we really haven't seen much of in the past, but through the advent of social media, we've seen it as well. Another interesting one, McDonald's not buying a Super Bowl ad, but using the fact that people are on Twitter and live tweeting during the Super Bowl to then use Twitter as a place to promote themselves during the Super Bowl was an interesting way. They saved money by not kind of buying this huge ad, but they still tried to join with the engagement that was happening on social media, especially during a big event like the Super Bowl. So these are all different ways that we've now seen advertising kind of drift into social media and change the landscape of what an ad is and what an ad campaign can look like. For today's assignment, I have left a link to an article on today's kind of lecture on the PDF. And I want you to read the article. It's about how social media marketing is actually powering the economy, which is something we don't often think about. I want you to read the article, and then I want you to answer the questions after you've read the article. And those questions should hopefully help you come to your own conclusions about what that article talks about and a little bit about what we've talked about today.